might as well start making videos on this bike. I've been building it for about a year now. It started life out as a 1968 CL175 sloper. I got it from a colleague of mine who had it in a barn. He was going to scrap it and asked me if I wanted it, so I took it off his hands. It was in really rough shape when I got it. The engine was seized, camshaft was snapped, timing chain was snapped. It was in bad shape. I'll put some pictures over this video to give you an idea. But so I started tearing it apart, and my initial plan was to restore the bike to original condition. But my buddy and I had seen some pictures of these little superchargers that guys were putting on their motorcycles and go-karts and mini bikes and stuff like that. So I decided to pick one up, and long story short, we now have this. The plan for this bike is to run it at ECTA land speed events. The Blytheville, Arkansas land strip that they run at is about 5 hours from me. So the plan is to get the bike ready for that. Ideally, I'd like to get it done for the September event, but I just don't see that happening at this point. But hopefully it should be ready in the spring. It's being built for the 175cc supercharged twin overhead cam class. Currently, there's no record that I can find for that class. So essentially, if I make a pass with it, it'll set a record. So like I said, I've been building it for about a year now. The bike is now far from stock. Obviously, everything is pretty much custom on it. So the supercharger is an AMR 300. They come off of K cars in Japan. I think Subaru Pleo, and there's a few other cars that come with these blowers on them. And so it's a 300cc blower. They also make a 500cc, both of which are overkill for this engine, but I mean, hey, why not? I'll get down into the main parts of it. So custom blower mount, I just took the side cover off the engine, mimicked the bolt pattern, and made this aluminum plate that bolts into the side of the crankcase and bolts to 2 ears on the blower. The other ears, there's a bracket here that bolts onto a welded plate to the frame. There's another bracket back here that bolts to where the old toolbox used to mount. Custom piping goes to a custom intake plenum. A burst panel here, burst plate, whatever you want to call it. If there's ever a backfire, this will open up and dissipate the pressure. On the other side, the inlet to the supercharger goes to the carburetor, so it's a draw-through system. The carburetor is off a Honda GL500. I believe it's a 29 millimeter Venturi. It's a CV carb with a accelerator pump. And that's the main system supercharger, at least. The exhaust is custom built by me, running O2 ports or wideband O2 bungs on both exhausts. Currently, it's just going to be running one for us to get it started. Rear sets are just eBay rear sets, custom mounts for the brakes and the shifter. Let's see. Kickstart was going to be in the way of the rear sets, so I believe this is off a CRF 50 dirt bike. Clip-ons are just eBay clip-ons. MPS Outlander kill, that's required for the ECTA events or land speed events. Custom kill switch, again, required by the ECTA. Other than that, the engine's, everything's pretty much stock other than that. The engine itself, the internals are stock. The only thing I did is gap the rings a little bit. It's got new rings, new pistons. Everything is stock. It's running on a anti-gravity 4-cell lithium battery, custom mount. Eventually this will be covered with a rear cowl, and I'll have to do the seat and whatnot. The wiring is just temporary to get it started. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The tank is just an eBay tank. I still have to run fuel lines, do fuel petcocks, you know, shut off filter and all that jazz. But I figured I'd start making videos on it now. I should have started way back when, just documenting this even for my own reference. But so today the plan is to, really the last thing I need to do to get the bike started is to put the boost gauge on. I welded in a bung here that just goes to a push to connect line, and then that'll go to a boost gauge here. The plan is to eventually, I'll more than likely just mount it where the gauge cluster is going to go, but for now I'm just going to make a bracket to mount it down here. When I start it on the bench, it'll just be easier for me to see, and I don't know exactly what gauges I'm going to be running or what dash or what I'm going to be doing up here, so for the time being I'm just going to probably put it right about there. This video I'll just go ahead and fabricate something up for this, get that mounted, and then hopefully throw some fuel in it and see if I can get this thing to kick over. So I think my plan is just take I have some of this old, I think this is 2-inch exhaust pipe from another project I did, and just make something up that this can sit in. It's a little loose, which actually will work out kind of well. I'll line the inside with some rubber. Since this is going to be bolted directly to the engine, I want to try to isolate this gauge so it's not vibrating like hell and hard to read. So I'll weld a plate onto the back of this so these studs can stick through. I can screw on the nuts on the back side, and then I'll figure out a little mounting bracket to weld to it to bolt it to the engine. got the top plate cut out and cleaned up. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that welded onto our tube. Got that welded up. So now, time to figure out how to mount it to the bike. I guess I forgot to mention, I don't plan on using the light, so I just went ahead and blocked it off. I never plan on running this bike at night. It's not gonna have lights or anything like that, so I'm not worried about it. I went ahead and put the nuts on the back of the gauge, as well as the push connect fitting. So now I'm just trying to figure out how I want to go about mounting this up. So I think what I'm going to do is just utilize the bolts here going into this cam cover. These should be easy enough to take off and put a plate there. So I have this just piece of, I don't know, this is probably 16 gauge steel. I'm going to drill the bolt pattern into that, mount it up there, and then just have another angled piece with the radius of the tube cut into it. I'll just weld it up and that should be that. So I just took the bolts out of that plate or cover and just put this piece of paper over the holes and drug my finger across it just to get the location of the holes. There's a lot of ways you could do it, but this seems like the easiest method for me. So the next thing I'm just trying to figure out is where exactly I want to place this so I can see it if I am sitting on the bike, as well as I don't want interference with trying to get the plug cap off. Once I figure that out, I'll probably make a little cardboard template for the bracket to come off and get that made up. So I got everything test fit together. It's bolted up, everything clears the way it should clear. I can get the boot off of the spark plug. I can get spark plug out still. So I'm happy with it. The vacuum line fits well. I'm going to trim these down, trim these studs down a little bit. But other than that, I think it looks good. I can see it when I'm sitting on the seat. I can see it when I'm standing next to the bike. So I'm happy. So I'm going to go ahead and weld it up, get it painted, and hopefully next time you see it, it's ready to go. All right, finished up the gauge mount. I actually really like it. It's simple, but I think it looks good and it should work just fine. I didn't cut these down yet, just in case I do move the gauge and I need that extra amount of thread. So I'm gonna leave those the way they are, but yeah, everything turned out pretty good, I think. Next thing I'm gonna do is put some fuel in it and try to get this thing started.